Okay, so I'm Oliver Groft and I'm presenting my research on psychological help seeking in high school boys. So to give a brief introduction on why I chose this topic, I go to an all-boys Catholic high school with a very, very close-knit community. But recently in my time here and in the school, we've had some tragic losses from people losing their battles with mental health struggles. And next door, we have another school that's an all-girls Catholic high school, and they haven't had those types of losses. And it just made me wonder what could be going on in this all-boys school that's keeping people from getting the help they need, especially because there are abundant resources. So that's why I wanted to look into this topic. And to give some context for why everyone else should be interested in this and why this matters. So at college universities, there's a lot of research showing that rates of depression and mental health struggles are highly rising and that they're very widespread, which is not good. And people cite academic pressure, financial burden, ratio from female to male, advances in technology and lifestyle choices. They've found these all to be different factors that influence the rates in college students. And then also nationwide, coming from the COVID pandemic, there's also been a huge wave of mental health struggles around the country with people from all walks of life, and mental health professionals in particular are short and they're fully booked, and it kind of shows that there's just a lot of issues going on with the nation where we need to focus on seeing what's going on with people's mental health. So the core problem is that these rates are still persisting, even though there are resources and social media and the whole society is trying to promote openness and help, but the problem still persists. And also, with the growing of social media, the stigmas that come with mental health struggles are now very, very prevalent wherever people look. So that leads me to the overall research question of how does the environment of a single-gender high school influence the help-seeking attitudes of male students regarding professional psychological assistance? So diving into the background literature, a help-seeking attitude is defined as a person's overall evaluation, positive or negative, about seeking professional psychological help for mental health concerns. So they can be positive, and that is been found to, when they're positive help-seeking attitudes, they found that to be linked to people with low stigma tolerance, so people who don't feel the pressure of stigmas are more open to seeking professional help. Self-concealment would be negatively related to this, because if people are trying to conceal the struggles they're going through, they're not going to be as open to seeking help. And then cultural factors have been found. There's research on a bunch of different cultural factors such as religion, race, and like the areas that you grow up in, the people around you, influence the amount of openness and the tolerance you'll have towards getting professional help. So help seeking as a whole is very important, just because no matter how many resources society throws towards this problem, people won't be helped if they don't want to seek help. So that's why help seeking is important. And then in the 2015 national survey, this kind of shows why it matters in an all-boys school specifically. It showed that men were significantly less likely to seek professional help. So that's why it's kind of important to check out in this audience and see what's going on. As far as help seeking and gender, again, men have been linked to having less help seeking attitudes, and characterized by long depressive periods. Since they don't seek help, this often leads to violent behavior, substance abuse, or even suicide. And even deeper, this may go past biological gender, because in studies including transgender people, individuals who identify as male also seem to have the same characteristic. Moving in even further, single gender schooling. There have been a lot of different research done on single gender schools and psychological effects. And particularly important to this is that they found that it exaggerates what the perceived it exaggerates what people exaggerate what they are stigmatized to not be. So in an all-girls school, girls have been found to be more open to doing typically boy activities, and in all-boys schools, they've kind of found similar things. But also, there's a lot of back and forth in this field looking into the all-boys and all-girls schools, because other studies have shown like more gender stereotyping in all-boys schools. So the gap is that this is looking at the help seeking in a single gender school. This audience just hasn't been specifically looked at yet, and I think going into it, I thought that it would give an interesting perspective. And then also the Fisher and Turner Attitudes Towards Seeking Professional Psychological Help questionnaire is a very widely used instrument in the field of looking at help seeking. And I wanted to look at if their identified factors will still be valid in this survey group. So moving into it more, the survey instrument I used is this Fisher and Turner Attitudes Towards Seeking Professional Psychological Help survey. And it was created to assess the willingness of individuals to seek professional help. It was originally curated in 1970, so it was a long time ago, which is another reason why I wanted to test it in this population. And it's got 29 items that are categorized into 4 subgroups. Factor 1 is recognition of need for help. Factor 2 is stigma tolerance. Factor 3 is interpersonal openness. And Factor 4 is confidence in mental health practitioners. And then, since this survey has been so widely used, another researcher in 2009 did their dissertation examining all of the times that it's been used and testing the reliability of the scale by comparing all of these studies and seeing if they have like a good enough correlation with each other. And so what they overall found was that it's been reliable for many different groups, and that testing it in different groups has brought different conclusions. So that shows that this is a good thing to be using. If I'm testing a new group, I obviously want to see if they'll show anything different from the typical population. So with the data collection, I used mail merge to email the Google form with the with Fisher and Turner's questionnaire to teachers and club leaders, and it was voluntarily filled out. And then I got a total of about 260 responses. So our respondents, as I mentioned, this is an all-boys Catholic high school, and I didn't venture outside of this, so all of the respondents are males at an all-boys Catholic high school. They're, for the most part, Caucasian was the most prevalent race identified as, and upper-class students, as over 75% of respondents reported that their estimated household income was over $100,000 a year. So the majority of this population is coming from wealthier backgrounds. As far as ethical considerations, I got instructor approval before sending it out. There was a mandatory consent form where if you said no, then the survey ended. Nobody was required to take it, so it was voluntary, and then responses were kept anonymous and saved in a password-protected folder. So going into the data analysis, I modeled it based off of the dissertation paper done by the Palmer paper. And so they did intercorrelations for the subscale reliability, where they looked at the questions in each subscale to see if they were correlated enough to be a grouping together. The descriptive factor scores is overall just checking to see like what the group is showing. The correlation matrices are just correlating all of the different factors and questions with each other to see if anything interesting shows. And then the Korenbach alpha reliability coefficient is a test to see the reliability of the survey based off of the question answers correlating with each other. So for my results, in my descriptive statistics, I thought one of the most noteworthy things was that the interpersonal openness had the lowest score, or the least positive score. That seems to be interesting to me and I'll explain that later. And then also another thing was that stigmatization has the highest standard deviation. For the reliability analysis, overall, we found that the survey, just like the Palmer paper had described, everything Fisher and Turner had curated in the survey seemed to be very reliable within this sample group. And then moving into discussion and conclusion, so relating the stigmatization, having the stigmatization as having the stigmatization as a high standard deviation is interesting to me because the previous research had a lot of discussion about how stigmas affect people in single gender schooling, and it was just interesting that a high standard deviation would show up because it kind of shows that there's a wide range of how people perceive the stigma. Overall, the high level of consistency wasn't surprising to me because this has been used so many times in so many different populations, so I didn't necessarily expect anything different, but it was interesting to see that this survey, curated in 1970, would still apply and be very reliable in this very niche population. And then also the survey audience, just with the help-seeking attitude being low, it was just, or the interpersonal openness being the lowest factor, was another interesting thing to me because in the survey audience, it's another thing relating to the fact that it's an all-boys school and the males have a low tendency to reach out for help, so it kind of made sense that the interpersonal openness would be kind of low. And then as a conclusion, so there were some limitations with this. When I initially sent out the survey, the first group of responses were a little bit messed up, so I had to exclude them because of some issues with the way I formatted things. The time that people had to take the survey was it was open for a pretty wide range of time. So I probably would have, in the future, wished that I could have done it as a whole group all at once and explained everything and what it meant, because a lot of the questions have language that might not be familiar to the everyday person. And then also going with further research, it might be interesting to test this again, maybe in an all-girls school. If I had the resources, I definitely would have done it with, if I had the time, I would have done this and included an all-girls school with it to see how the difference shows with the all-boys and all-girls. And then overall, the takeaways are just that even though we have the resources, people aren't open to talking with one another and seeking the help, so we need to, as culturally address that to make things better. Thank you.
Okay.